To finish out our discussion on drawer boxes, we're going to look at the material settings in order to get these guides in the right place. Because if we look at our cabinet right now, the guide is setting on top of the door stretcher, but the box is not in the right place. If I click on the subfront, you can see it's actually setting on top of the door stretcher as well. So there's a couple factors that impact this, and I'm going to do the changes back in the material library. But first, I also want to point out that if we go into our cabinet construction and go to reveals, there's one question that also impacts this. The drawer box position. You can type in a certain distance from the bottom, which may work for some people, but I think for most people, it'd be best to leave it on default and control these at the guide level. Because if you choose different guides, you want it to be able to update no matter what construction you're using. So I would recommend using default, but if you're in a special circumstance, you can use that as well. So that's the one setting that controls the drawer box in the cabinet construction. Everything else is going to be controlled at the drawer guide material level. And so, like I said, we got a couple issues here because my guide is showing through the top. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a clearance on the bottom, because if we look at the Bloom spec, it says we need 9/16 below the drawer box, and then on the drawer box we need a 1/2 inch reset. So let's do this one step at a time. I'm going to go back to the main screen of Cabinet Vision, go to Material, and let's go to Clearance and put, I don't know why this comes in as 0, but we want to put 9/16 here. And let's, like I said, one step at a time. And just now, one important thing, when you change a material and go into a job that was already created, we need to go to Utilities and Update Job. And I normally just check them all, but in this case, I know I just want the materials. And what that does is it pulls a fresh copy of the material library. So now if we look, well, now we have our 9/16 clearance, but I don't want the guide way up there. I want the guide to be on the door stretcher, and I want the box to be where it's at right now. Let's go back to the material library. And you'll see that there's two settings that kind of work in conjunction together. So this minimum below box was the first step. That's what gets us the 9/16 clearance. But we have to also do this screw center to box reference. This is how I offset my drawer box from my drawer guide. I want to have a 9/16 offset because I put 9/16 here. So I'm going to do inch and 15/32 minus 9/16. And if you're more comfortable, you can switch it to decimals, which is probably not a bad idea. And then we can just copy these guys down. And let's go see how that did. So again, we'll go into our job, and we won't see our changes until we go to Utilities and hit Update Materials. And now we're looking at a whole lot better. So the drawer guide is setting on the drawer stretcher, and it's coming in where we need to be. So the clearance was the first step to get the 9/16, and then the screw center to bottom of box. And just for clarification, what we was changing there on that second step was this screw center to the bottom of the box, that distance right there. Because if you remember, it was 0.906, and that's what we have. And so if you want to use a different clearance, now you know how those settings come from. If you just want a 1/2 inch on the bottom instead of 9/16, just put 1/2 inch and then make your box come out whatever you need to be with that second step. Now, a couple other things that I want to note. First of all, we're still getting our notches, and we're getting that little hoe on the back for the runner. And it looks like it's too high, and I'm guessing I'll just have to move it by 9/16 again. But it's important that we know where these things are coming from, because as you get into CNC machining, you want these hoes to be accurate. So I want you to understand where they're coming from. So let's go back. If we go into our drawer guide, go into our guide settings. Because of the way I'm holding the back up, so I don't even need the notch. So for my case, I'm just going to zero out the notch because I don't want to see it. Now, there's some considerations that you'll have to think about if you don't want to do this, because, say you're doing plywood drawers that you do want a notch on some of them, you would have to either make a copy of your guide or have a UCS to turn this on and off based on which material or whatever is being used. If you're constructing it without a notch, just zero them out. If you are using a notch, just leave the settings exactly like they are. Okay, now the last thing I want to cover on drawer guides is the actual hole spacing. So let's look at a 21-inch Bloom guide. I'll just right click and go to Properties. And there's two ways to get to this. If we go to Operations, we can actually see the mount hose, the diameter and the depth, and the actual positions. This is a quick and easy way to edit the operations. Now we can also, for more advanced use, go into the model editor, and this actually, we can add operations, we can move those left and right. We can really take control of how our model looks and what operations are firing. We're definitely not going to cover the model editor right now, but I wanted to just give you a glimpse of how this drawer guide knows to fire hose. So if I look at my drawer guide hose, right now it's 5mm hose, 12 millimeters deep. And again, I can just toggle back and forth between inches and millimeters. And then I got my positions here, which these are going to be set up for the Blum guides. But, for example, it's 37 to that first mounting position, that second orange hoe, and then they got the other orange hose mapped there, and that's what Cabinavision uses by default. But if you wanted to change that, if you wanted to make this hit a different hoe, you just simply come into this operations tab and change it here. And one other quick tip, if you never want to drill for these, I don't like to delete them. What I would do is just zero out the diameter and the depth, and that's a good way to get rid of it without losing the functionality. So you can always come back in here and re-enable it later. So I'm gonna leave my drawer guides enabled, but I'm actually going to, on that back hoe offset, I'm gonna make the diameter 0 and the depth 0. That's how I'm gonna disable that back hoe. And again, some of these things, this may not be exactly how you're constructing cabinets, but my go with this first section that I'm titling ProPath is so you're learning where these pieces are coming from, and you're understanding that you don't have to accept the stock model. There's all sorts of customizations. So now if we look at our drawer box, we no longer have a hoe, and our drawer box back is no longer getting notched. That's a nice full board. And I'm gonna actually just go to 3D, and I'm gonna hide everything except my doors and drawers again, and let's take another look at this. So now you can see my drawer box bottom is coming all the way out. There's no notches, there's no hoe. The guide looks nice, and we have our correct clearances. And so hopefully that gives you an idea of how drawer guides and drawer boxes and how everything works together and how it can be customized. And there's really no limit to what type of drawer guides you can set up, whether it's side mount or grass or Blum or whatever the case may be. All of these are just templates, and you can customize the operations and the clearances as needed.